there is a lot to talk about today, specifically in regards to Ilhan Omar. So I'm going to talk about that. I know it's like a big fucking turn all of a sudden out of like from the gaming area that we were in. So not really Nancy Pelosi so old. She looks like a Dark Souls character. There's your tie-in. Boom, roasted. We are going to talk about Ilhan Omar. Okay. Time for politics now. We're talking about the shameless attacks against Ilhan Omar for speaking the truth. Have you considered reaching out to Ilhan Omar about this? Dude, Twitch viewers with like perma Twitch brain rot like think that I can just that I could just like on a whim be like, Ilhan Omar, come on to the fucking Twitch stream, like pull this shit up on your Discord, like, yeah, let me just summon Ilhan Omar, dude. Like, it doesn't work that way, okay? This is a congressperson who's like currently being fucking attacked aggressively. Anyway, so Ilhan Omar is being piled on right now, just like in the past, by Republicans and Democrats once again for saying like obviously truthful things, including saying that the United States is the world's #1 terrorist. Like, what we do as the United States is no different than what the Taliban does, no different than what all these other countries do. And as a matter of fact, we're even better than a lot of these other terror cells. And she's right. And this is a statement that I have said, I have mentioned numerous times as well. It's not something that I'm embarrassed about. It's something that I've said with my chest a million times over. And it's not every day where you hear a fucking actual representative, a sitting congressperson, be so bold and so brave as to speak the truth in this regard. And of course, because of that, every single person is going to lose their minds. Better meaning scarier than terrorists? Yeah, like we are the best at doing terror. Okay? So let's do it.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for your testimonies. Mr. Adams, in 1991, you pleaded guilty to 2 counts of withholding information from Congress regarding your involvement in the Iran-Contra affair, for which you were later pardoned by President George H.W. Bush. I fail to understand why members of this committee or the American people should find any testimony that you give today to be true.
I'm gonna get someone to track your ass down, you pussy ass bitch.
Hassle.
Aw. What's he gonna do when they track my ass down? Are they gonna come suck my dick from the back, dude? Is that what they're gonna do? Is that what you want to do? And you can't do it yourself, so you're gonna get someone else to do it? Aw.
Truthful.
Idiot.
If I can respond to that.
It wasn't a question.
On
February, that was not a question. That was I reserve the right to
imagine being this fucking butthurt about the actions of the imperialist state that you happen to reside in, which costs $0 fucking to not defend, but instead you choose to defend it. Like, you get so fucking butthurt about old ass dipshits. This is the old video. We're going to start off with this one, and then we're going to get to the other ones.
To my time.
It is not right.
That was not a question.
Committee can attack
on February 8th,
who is not permitted to reply.
That was not a question. Thank you for your participation. On February 8th, 1982, you testified before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee about U.S. policy in El Salvador.
Let's go, love you,
in that hearing, you dismissed as communist propaganda report about the massacre of El Mozote, in which more than 800 civilians, including children as young as 2 years old, were brutally murdered by U.S.-trained troops. During that massacre, some of those troops bragged about raping a 12-year-old girl before they killed them. Girls before they killed them. You later said that the U.S. policy in El Salvador was a fabulous
Have
achievement.
you had it sucked from the back?
Yes or no, do you still think so?
From the day that President Duarte was elected in a free election to this day, El Salvador has been a democracy. That's a fabulous achievement.
Yes or no, do you?
Dude, what's up? So you're saying, like, you know, the fascist regime changes that you facilitated were poggers?
You think that massacre was a fabulous achievement that happened under our watch?
He's like, come on, bro, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet, dude. And in this case, it was nuns that we fucking brutalized and murdered, you know, among farmers and their families, that sort of thing. It just, you know, it's just when life hands you lemons, you make lemonade.
Ridiculous question, and
yes or no?
No.
I will take that as a yes.
I am not going to respond to that kind of personal attack, which is not the question.
Yes or no, would you support an armed faction within Venezuela that engages in war crimes, crimes against humanity or genocide, if you believe they were serving U.S. interest, as you did in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Nicaragua?
I am not going to respond to that question. I'm sorry. I don't think this entire line of questioning is meant to be real questions, and so I will not reply.
Whether you, under your watch, a genocide will take place, and you will look the other way because American interests were being upheld, is a fair question, because the American people want to know that anytime we engage a country, that we think about what our actions could be.
Good guys, by the way. We're the good guys.
And how...
You know, we don't do state-sponsored terror. Just kidding. We literally do, which is important. This is important for you guys to see and understand. It's like we are terrorists ourselves as a fucking terrorist nation. We are also state sponsors of terror. We do the most terror around the world. That's just the reality.
Believe our values are being furthered. That is my question. Will you make sure that human rights are not violated and that we uphold international and human rights?
I suppose there's...
I thought conservatives that love Donald Trump were anti-war. I thought conservatives that loved Donald Trump were anti-war and loved him because of how much of a dove he was in comparison to Hillary Clinton, who was like a cold-blooded murderer, right? I thought that they were isolationists. So why in the fuck do they lose their shit over Ilhan Omar? Very strange. Very strange. There must be some other reason. There must be some other reason why they hate Ilhan Omar.
There's a question in there, and the answer is that the entire thrust of American policy in Venezuela is to support the Venezuelan people's effort to restore democracy to their country. That's our policy.
I don't think anybody disputes that. The question I had for you is that does the interest of the United States include protecting human rights and include protecting people against genocide?
That is always the position of the United States.
Thank you. I yield back my time.
The House Democrats are literally going on a bigoted smear campaign against Ilhan Omar. We're going to talk about what you can do as well. There's going to be a call to action by the end of this. What the fuck? Oh, I got to fucking log in for this? All right, yeah, fuck that. Anyway. During a Monday hearing, Omar asked, where's the video for this? I can't find it. Other than just liking a tweet, yes, there is a phone number that you are going to call. I'll tell you guys in a second. During a Monday hearing, Omar asked Secretary of State Anthony Blinken where he believes victims of human rights abuses worldwide can pursue justice given the Biden administration's opposition to the International Criminal Court. This is long-standing. Remember, this is long-standing U.S. policy. If you hate Republicans and you think they're fucking bloodthirsty, racist warmongers, you have to recognize that Democrats do the exact same thing by continuing that reactionary imperialist policy. So I need you to I need you to remember that, okay? When we talk about this, the Invasion of the Hague Act might be a Bush era piece of legislation that literally dictates that the United States will invade the Hague with its armed forces if a single American military member or diplomat is prosecuted by the International Criminal Court. Just remember that. That is a real law that we have here. And the failure of national courts to investigate alleged war crimes. She specifically cited two contexts in which she said both the U.S. partners and their opponents should be investigated: the Israeli-Palestinian dispute and the war in Afghanistan. And by the way, that's not even for prosecution. That's for extraditing or for being held, being detained for a prosecution. That is a literal threat. That's a literal threat in the form of legislation in America. That is not a joke. This is a very real piece of legislation. Boys, I know that there are a lot of new people here. It's also, someone already put the Wikipedia, so I don't have to Google it. There it is. It's also known as the American Service Members Protection Act. It is a federal law that was enacted in August 2nd of 2002 that aims to protect the United States military personnel and other elected and appointed officials of the United States government against criminal prosecution by an international criminal court, which the United States is not party. It's literally also known as the Invasion of the Hague Act. Okay, it's been nicknamed the Hague Invasion Act. So to think that like we are not the villains in this story is so stupid. So let's hear what Ilhan Omar had to say to Anthony Blinken about Israel's war crimes, about the United States war crimes.
Oppose the court's investigation in both Palestine and in Afghanistan. I haven't seen any evidence in either cases that domestic courts both can and will prosecute alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity. And I would emphasize that in Israel and Palestine, this includes crimes committed by both the Israeli security forces and Hamas. In Afghanistan, it includes crimes committed by the Afghan national government and the Taliban. So in both of these cases, if domestic courts can't or won't pursue justice, and we oppose the ICC, where do we think the victims of these supposed crimes can go for justice? In both of these cases, if domestic courts can't or won't pursue justice, and we oppose the ICC, where do we think victims are supposed to go for justice? And what justice mechanisms do you support for them?
Thank you. First, let me just say at the outset that it is impossible not to be profoundly moved by not just the loss of life in the recent violence and conflict, but especially the children whose lives were lost. And we all have a tendency to throw statistics and numbers out there, but we were talking about boys and girls, Israelis and Palestinians, as well as men and women. And I think none of us, from whatever perspective we come, can lose sight of that. So that's one thing that's very important. Look, you know our views on the ICC.
I mean, this is like just put a fucking chair there, dude. Like, that's just nothing. He's saying absolutely nothing, dude.
And its jurisdiction. We continue to believe that absent a Security Council referral or absent the request by the state itself, that's not appropriate. I continue to believe that whether it is the United States or Israel, both of us have the means.
Mr. Secretary, I do understand that point. I'm asking what mechanisms do you think is available to them?
I believe that we have, whether it's the United States or Israel, we both have the mechanisms to make sure that there is accountability in any situations where there are concerns about the use of force. And
great. I love when the Twitter video just fucking poops for no reason. Wonderful, wonderful thing that happened here.
And et cetera. I believe that both of our democracies have that capacity, and we've demonstrated it. And we'll need to continue to demonstrate it going forward.
And in the case of Afghanistan?
With regard to Afghanistan, if it's our objection, as you know, was to the assertion of jurisdiction over the United States in the absence of a Security Council referral. And I believe that we have the means, if there are any cases to be brought, to adjudicate them and to find justice.
So she had this to say, and of course, this freaked conservatives out because, you know, a Muslim woman wearing a hijab who is also black and from Africa, like an African refugee, is speaking out against the atrocities that we commit around the world, and even comparing it to our enemies, right? Our enemies, those are the villains. Like, we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. Come on, it's as simple as that. So literally just like fucking understandably, they like lost their minds because they're all racist dipshits. Obviously, they lost their fucking minds over Ilhan Omar saying this. Now, the irony here is that Donald Trump has said similar things in the past, as I will show you. If you remember, like, this was one of Donald Trump's most based fucking moments where he was on with Bill O'Reilly and talking about Vladimir Putin and Russia and saying that we have killers too. Like, we're killers. You think we're good guys? No, we're pretty fucking bad guys. Here is a comparison of that little snippet.
A lot of killers. We got a lot of killers. Why, you think our country's so innocent? You think our country's so innocent? I don't know of any government leaders that are killers in America. Well, take a look at what we've done too. Putin.
So he was right. I mean, that was a correct take, and I have mentioned this in the past. Of course, Donald Trump was like, we have a lot of killers, and then was like, but I want to do even more of that killing. If you recall, that's what happened with Qasem Soleimani. But, you know, he was truthful. And Republicans at the time were loving that he was, like, being honest about, and being an isolationist, and being honest about the American imperialist war machine that's, like, taking so much money. I thought there was a lot of populism that was happening on the right. But for some reason, when Ilhan Omar says similar things, it's like, whoa, what the fuck? How dare you, black Muslim man, woman? Very strange. I wonder what it is. I wonder what the difference is between Ilhan Omar and Donald Trump. I wonder what was going on there. So not only that, but also the fucking idiotic House Democratic leadership, these fucking animals, every single one of them, these cowardly dogs, okay? I spit on them. I spit on all of them. Shame on them. Shamefully jumped on the bullshit manufactured outrage that the Republicans were engaging in, and fucking slammed on to Ilhan Omar as well. Legitimate Washington, D.C. Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, Majority Whip James E. Clyburn, Assistant Speaker Catherine Clark, Caucus Chairman Hakeem Jeffries, and Caucus Vice Chair Pete Aguilar issued this joint statement on addressing comments made by Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. Legitimate criticism of the policies of both the United States and Israel is protected by the values of free speech and democratic debate. And indeed, such criticism is essential to the strength and health of our democracies. But drawing false equivalencies, big but there, drawing false equivalencies between democracies like the U.S. and Israel and groups that engage in terrorism like Hamas and the Taliban foments prejudice and undermines progress towards a future of peace and security for all. Yeah, a future of peace and security for all, as long as there is unrelenting silence from the other side, which was the words of Benny Gantz, if you recall, in the last round of bombing in the Gaza Strip conducted by Israel in one of the operations that they like to call mowing the grass. Okay? Straight fascism. Straight up fascist bullshit. Okay? We welcome the clarification by Congresswoman Omar that there is no moral equivalency between the U.S. and Israel and Hamas and the Taliban. Pussies, all of them. Cowardly fucking dogs, all of them. Okay? Yeah, it is a false equivalence. You guys want to know why it's a false equivalence to make a comparison between Hamas and Israel, or to make a comparison between the Taliban and the United States of America? Because Israel and the United States of America are significantly better at doing terror. Okay? Just because one is a legitimate state, even though Israel's legitimacy could be called into question, specifically in regards to its apartheid state currently as it stands, and should be prosecuted in the international criminal courts. But we won't even get into that. But just because one is a legitimate, well-established state does not change the reality that they are significantly better at doing terror than Hamas could ever fucking dream of. Even if Hamas wanted to do as much terror as Israel does on a daily basis, they do not have the access or weapons. Okay? They simply do not have the power. Same with the Taliban. Get the fuck out of here. It is a false equivalence. It is a false equivalence. A false equivalence because we are bigger and better at doing terrorism. Just look at the fucking kill count. Just look at the body count. Look at the KDA. Ilhan Omar said, I love all the pearl clutching that the right wing does whenever I talk about justice for victims of atrocities in the U.S. of our allies, but twist themselves into a pretzel defending Trump, calling our country a lot of killers. Miss me with your fake outrage. Trump defends Putin, says the U.S. has a lot of killers. O'Reilly told Trump that Putin's a killer. Trump's reply, you think our country's so innocent. Ilhan Omar, honorary member of Hamas, just compared to U.S. military with the Taliban. Sadly, it's not even surprising anymore. We have terrorist sympathizers in Congress, and it's being normalized by the mainstream media. If we have terrorist sympathizers in Congress, it's Lauren Boebert. Lauren Boebert herself is like too much of a pussy to be a white supremacist terrorist, but like she sympathizes with them. So I don't know what the fuck she's talking about. Okay? The irony, of course, is that like Ilhan Omar is a politician. So she didn't even straight up say that like America is the same as Taliban and Israel is the same as Hamas. Like she didn't even say that. She wouldn't even be right if she said that because America and IDF are significantly worse. Okay? Like that's the truth. So there's that. Are you saying that? No, I'm not even saying that. I'm taking it one step further. I'm saying that if we are looking at terror as like as like a political goal to disrupt the way of life of people without a single care for innocent civilians as casualties along the way, yes, America is not only a state sponsor of terror and does terror itself, but it's the best terrorist in the fucking planet. Okay? It's so much better. America is so much better at doing terror than fucking Taliban could ever dream of. I mean, we're so good at doing terror. We funded half of these motherfuckers that are terrorists themselves, that we call terrorists themselves. We give them the guns, and then we go slap them around for using the same guns we gave them. Make no mistake. So I'm not mincing my words here. I'm actually telling you exactly what I mean. So of course, because of this comparison, they like lost their fucking minds, and you know, they said that the United States and Israel are just imperfect. You know, they're just small beans. And Ilhan Omar is being so insensitive. For saying we must have the same level of accountability for justice and justice for all victims of crimes against humanity. And including U.S., Israel, Hamas, Afghanistan, and the Taliban in the same fucking video. Anyway, so she had that fucking video up, and then in an early Thursday tweet, after these attacks started coming like crazy, Ilhan Omar said, it's shameful for colleagues who call me when they need my support to now put a statement asking for clarification and not just call. The Islamophobic tropes in this statement are offensive. The constant harassment and silencing from the signers of this letter is unbearable. Citing an open case against Israel, U.S., Hamas, and Taliban in the ICC isn't a comparison or from deeply seated prejudice. You might try to undermine these investigations or deny justice to their victims, but history has taught us that... She wrote taught. She misspelled taught. us that the truth can't be hidden or silenced forever. And she is 100% correct. She is 100% correct. Cowardly fucking dogs in the Democratic Party. Absolute pieces of shit. Shame on them. Shame on all of them. But not just shame on them, call them. Okay? This is my call to action for all of you. If you sometimes feel like you are, you have no voice, you have no say, you do actually have a say. Okay? Call up these motherfuckers. Call up every single one of these representatives. Okay? And I'll try to figure out what their phone numbers are individually. I'm sure there's like a compilation of it somewhere. And be polite when you call them, certainly, because they will use that against you. If you are impolite, they will use that against you and say Ilhan Omar's supporters are like fucking bad or whatever. Okay? And you can be as, you know, it doesn't matter if you're angry. It doesn't matter if you're upset. Just when you call, just be as polite as you possibly can. Because cursing these fucking assholes out is ultimately going to be used against you. It's going to be weaponized against you. You have to be as presentable as possible when you talk to them. And all you need to say is you stand with Ilhan Omar when you call up these offices, and that you oppose any effort to strip her of her committees or censure. That's it. That's all you need to say. That's the line. And I'm also seeing if Ilhan Omar would come on the stream as well. Hold on. Let me see if I can find like use your retail voice. Yes, use your retail voice. You fucking roast me for suggesting you reach out and now you go and do it. Dude, do you think you invented reaching out to politicians, you fucking moron? I was roasting you because you were crying about it in the middle of fucking the game conference coverage. Okay? I didn't roast you because you were bringing up a good suggestion. I was roasting you because you were crying about it while we were watching fucking video games and waiting for Elden Ring to come out. Okay? Wow, dude. Imagine literally inventing calling a representative, dude. Thanks. I want to also show you one other thing. And there are the N-word. You will hear the N-word in this. So there is a trigger warning for it. This is what happens when Ilhan Omar speaks out against American imperialism. Now, hear how polite this guy is until the words he uses.
Destroy cultural heritage. They destroy cultural heritage. They destroy history. Just like Miss Ilhan Omar, because Muslims are terrorists, and she is a raghead nigger, and every anti-American communist piece of shit that works for her, I hope you fucking get what's coming for you. They destroy.
Like, it's wonderful. Look at how polite he is until he's not, you know? He's just like so politely issuing a death threat and using those words. It catches you off guard, right? You're like, wow, this is wild. Who's talking? Some random fucking guy who decided to call up Ilhan Omar and say shit like this. Don't be like that person, by the way. Obviously, you're not going to use slurs or whatever. But even when you call people up, like when you call your congressperson, don't ever fucking use curse words or anything like that. That's just a regular fascist dipshit, okay? Is this what your Twitter DMs are like? My Twitter DMs are closed for this specific reason, but my Instagram DMs are not closed because you can't close them. And this is exactly like that, yes. So,
States Congress.
When we serve in Congress with Islamophobes like Representative Mo Brooks and Democratic colleagues who won't condemn him, instead give legitimacy to this dangerous rhetoric, when will our caucus forcefully stand up against hate towards their Muslim colleagues and constituents? Doesn't matter. Muslims are not a robust voting bloc, so no one gives a shit. And it doesn't matter because there aren't that many Muslim colleagues in Congress, so no one gives a shit. That's why every motherfucker piles on. Let's hear what Mo Brooks said back in 2019.
Unfortunately, we now have people in the United States Congress who view Israel as an enemy, and that makes for an entirely different mix of conversation.
Right. Is it? But and this is some like it seems like a trend in the Democratic Party that the maybe they don't want to say it outright, or they're not going to say it outright on the news, but it does seem like there's a trend questioning the trend of questioning the alliance the United States has with Israel.
There is, and I think it's based on the growing influence of the Islamic religion in the Democratic Party ranks. Keep in mind that Muslims, more so than most people, have great animosity towards Israel and the Jewish faith. And as you have more and more Muslims in the United States,
this is straight up Islamophobia, by the way. To just be like, Muslims represent a fucking threat.
As they gain greater and greater influence in elections, particularly within Democratic Party primaries, then you're going to see more and more people like Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and company that are anti-Israel, and that brings an entirely different viewpoint into the United States Congress. And this is going to be, I think you're going to see this influence in the Democratic Party grow and grow and grow over time, and ultimately become the dominant influence within the Democratic Party, where the Democratic Party will eventually become very strongly anti-Jewish and anti-Israel.
And that's the thing; it is becoming the face of the Democratic Party. Trump has done a little bit of that, pointing that out. But that seems to be that's the clear choice. That if you're pro-Israel and you're on the Republican side, and the other side, if you have questions or you're skeptical of the relationship and you're like the BDS movement or whatever, you tend to be Democrat these days.
So I want to show you guys something here, okay? So this is David Harris, who said a member of Congress put two vibrant democracies, U.S. and Israel, in the same boat as two bloodthirsty terror groups, Hamas and Taliban. This is the CEO of the American Jewish Committee, by the way. Beyond shocking, beyond reprehensible. And Ilhan Omar actually sits on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Will members of her own party speak up? Wow. David Harris. Congratulations to Austria Chancellor Sebastian Kurz on the new government with Greens and including the first female majority cabinet in the nation's history. Kurz is a proven friend to the U.S., a strong and outspoken partner of Israel, and a rising voice on the European stage. Austria's welcome to a party with a Nazi past. Austria's new chancellor has given an anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim party founded by ex-Nazis key posts in its coalition government. So, once again, mega-Zionist, ultra-nationalist reactionaries are very comfortable collaborating with neo-Nazis and Nazis and hype them up with these accidental oopsies all the time. Okay? Like, but it's not even an oopsie. They don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck. They see it as like they see these as people with similar mindsets. Doesn't matter. Because ultimately they're like, well, we have short-term goals that align. And this shit happens with Bibi Netanyahu as well. Bibi Netanyahu and Viktor Orban are homies. Viktor Orban literally ran on like anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. And whenever someone points this out, you're like, wow, dude. How crazy of me to be a fucking anti-Semite, dude. Yeah. They align on having similar enemies within Muslims and Muslim nations. Like, imagine saying the same but with Jews, that democracy is falling apart because Jews are in a power position. This would be World War III. I mean, yeah. If any American believes that Israel is a legitimate state, then give back the land of Native America. Simple. So, the leader of that Nazi party is wearing a talisman of his own urine and a metal plate in his pants, which was blessed by a shaman. This is no joke. Wait, really? Oh, that's great. That's great, dude. So yeah, if you're in New York 10, you can call Nadler's office and ask them if they condone threats in Representative Omar's life. These are the phone numbers for DC, for Manhattan, for Brooklyn. Same for all signers here, especially if you're unlucky enough to live in Lincolnshire and have Brad Schneider. You have Hakeem Jeffries' DC office number as well, Central Brooklyn office number. There's a bunch of other numbers down here as well. But again, as I've said before, you have to be polite when you make these phone calls, okay? You have to be polite when you make these phone calls. Wonderful, wonderful stuff happening here, okay? They did this in the past with Ilhan Omar time and time again. She gets fucking death threats regularly. I have talked about how I believe she is one of the, if not the bravest fucking congressperson, for this and many other reasons. And yeah, I am unconditionally with her on this issue, much like most of the other issues that she advocates for. That's crazy too, by the way. The conversation has shifted so fucking quickly from a completely understandable, empathetic, and humane question to supposedly the world's most moral world police, to Ilhan Omar is a monster so quickly, and the Democrats fucking jumped on it. They were so horny to engage in this dog pile. Imagine if we lived in a world where the headline was, Member of Congress demands answers from State Department for victims of war crimes. Yeah, but instead it's Ilhan Omar again sets off a fight among Democrats. Showdown over Omar's comments exposes sharp divisions among Democrats. Okay, again, Representative Ilhan Omar appeared to equate the U.S. and Israeli atrocities with those of Hamas and Taliban. Atrocities in fucking quotes. U.S. and Israeli atrocities with those of Hamas and the Taliban, prompting outrage at a time when her party needs unity to maintain its slim majority. It's the slim majority that is that is in threat here. Incredible stuff, dude. Absolutely incredible stuff. Atrocities that the U.S. and Israel engages in. 66 babies were fucking murdered by Israel like 2 weeks ago. Atrocities. That's great. A fellow Democrat and dean of the Minnesota delegation, Representative Betty McCollum, responds to controversy around Representative Ilhan Omar's tweet. When state actors, including democracies or non-state actors such as terrorist organizations, engage in acts that indiscriminately kill civilians and commit gross violations of human rights, such as torture or indefinite detention, there should be internationally recognized mechanisms to achieve accountability and enforce agreed upon humanitarian standards. Representative Omar asked a serious question, which is her right as a member of Congress, but the hypocrites at the NRCC, including Chairman Tom Emmer, should be reminded of their silence when Trump administration sat down with the Taliban and negotiated a diplomatic agreement without the Afghan government while American service members and Afghan civilians were being attacked and killed. The second part of that is whatever, but the first part of that is correct. We just found out what? Representative Schneider with an updated statement. Democracy should never be lumped in with terrorists. I'm pleased Ilhan Omar heard our concerns about her tweet, issued a clarification, and agrees with our point. I hope we can avoid such offhanded statements like the future we work together to support American jobs and families. Dude, I fucking hate these people. I hate them. He's so fucking gross, dude. Ilhan Omar came out with a statement saying, released the following clarification on our questions during the House Foreign Affairs Committee this week. On Monday, I asked Secretary of State Anthony Blinken about an ongoing international criminal court investigations. To be clear, the conversation was about accountability for specific incidents regarding those ICC cases, not a moral comparison between Hamas and Taliban and the U.S. and Israel. I was in no way equating terrorist organizations with democratic countries and well-established judicial systems. Yeah. Except the difference is, again, if you question Hamas when you're in Gaza, you're going to get fucking clapped. If you question America, you get this kind of fucking clappage in comparison to other countries where you shouldn't have this at all. We are supposed to be a democracy. Okay? I'm not equating the fucking murder of someone for exercising their free speech here. But think about the amount of fucking people that immediately dogpiled on Ilhan Omar for actually stating her point of view here. I thought this was a representative democracy, but it's not. The U.S. and Taliban are very different as a stupid comment. Yes, the U.S. and Taliban are very different in the sense that the United States does this shit everywhere, and has caused significantly more death and destruction worldwide than the Taliban could ever fucking imagine or dream of. So yes, the United States is much, much, much worse than the Taliban. Their argument against Omar boils down to we are God believers and our enemies are infidels. There is no equivalency. When you call them out, they use every argumentative fallacy in the book. But what about losing hope in the party? It'll be another 30 years before we get real lefty in power. Good luck. I don't think it's going to happen. Squirrel says, just an FYI, when you're the subject of a bad faith, cynical smear campaign, and you apologize to the scumbags that were constantly trying to destroy you, all you're doing is giving them ammo, and they will never, ever stop. If the Corbyn experience taught us anything, it's that it also demoralizes and throws under the bus your supporters who stuck their neck for you and makes them think, if you're not even willing to stand up for yourself, why should we bother? But hey, if you think doubling down on a losing strategy is the way to go have fun, I 100% agree with this. I don't think that like sentiments like this or statements like this should be bullied out of existence. And for the record, like that's the goal. The goal here is to literally bully you and thwart your fucking so yeah, I am a big advocate for doubling down. But here, let's just fucking let's just talk about it many times over. Noam Chomsky has talked about this exact same thing over and over again. So here, let's watch.
I think that you should bomb. If you take a poll among U.S. intellectuals, support for bombing Afghanistan is just overwhelming. How many of them think that you should bomb Washington because of the U.S. war against Nicaragua, let's say, or Cuba, or Turkey, or anyone else? If anyone were to suggest this, they'd be considered insane. You know? But why? I mean, if one is right, why is the other wrong? When you try to get someone to talk about this question, they just will try. They can't comprehend what your question is, because you cannot comprehend that we should apply to ourselves the standards you apply to others. That is incomprehensible. Now, you know, there couldn't be a moral principle more elementary. I mean, all I have to do is read George Bush's favorite philosopher. You know, there's a definition, famous definition in the Gospels of the hypocrite. I mean, the hypocrite is the person who refuses to apply to himself the standards he applies to others. By that standard, just, you know, the entire commentary and discussion of the war, so-called war on terror, is pure hypocrisy, virtually without exception. Can anybody understand that? No, can't understand it.
We never,
if you take
never abide by the same standards that we apply to everyone else. Ilhan Omar being smeared by far-right Republicans and liberal Democrat hacks for daring to say the truth about the U.S. and Israel being terrorist regimes.
That wasn't even a worry. There wasn't even a that we should pay attention.
Remember, they loved Chomsky when Chomsky was like, you should vote for Joe Biden. You know, I wonder why liberals stopped talking about Noam Chomsky, though, immediately after that Joe Biden statement.
They did oust...
They never talk about Chomsky, and they never talk about Chomsky before the Joe Biden statement, and they don't talk about Chomsky after the Joe Biden statement. But this statement is fucking completely correct.
More brutal regime, the Taliban. There was...
How is U.S. worse than Taliban? Because the Taliban are a bunch of fucking goat herders with like old ass weapons that they got somewhat from us and also Russia. Okay? That's why, motherfucker. Are you stupid? You really think that that is like even remotely comparable to the might of the U.S. military? Our forces? CIA Twitter says it all. The Stinger missile supplied by the United States gave Afghan guerrillas, generally known as the Mujahideen, the ability to destroy the dreaded Mi-24D helicopter, gunships deployed by the Soviets to enforce their control over Afghanistan. Artifact of the week. Interesting. And next time you wonder, like, where the fuck did these guys get their guns from? You know. Okay?
That wasn't even a worrying. That wasn't even a worrying. Wasn't even a worrying.
But is that a moral thing to do? They did get rid of a brutal regime. There was celebration in now,
good, fine. Let them bomb Israel and get rid of the brutal regime there. This is the 35th year of a harsh, brutal, and vicious occupation, supported unilaterally by the United States, constant terror and atrocities. Suppose Palestinians say, well, we're under terrorist attack for 35 years, therefore we have a right to carry out suicide bombings.
Which is what they say.
Do you accept this? Does anybody accept it?
Nobody accepts it.
All right, then how come everyone accepts the Israeli claim to be doing it, which is a much weaker claim? They are the military occupiers.
Don't forget the part about torturing and raping innocent children, women, and men to introduce terror in the region. They're both shitty, hard to compare with exacts. When you say that, I don't know if you're talking about the American military or if you're talking about the Taliban. Like, I legitimately don't know. Are you talking about, like, Abu Ghraib, for example? Like you think like our war criminals don't fucking torture, rape, and murder people, innocent civilians, to create terror in that region? I really don't know. I legitimately don't know if you're talking about the Taliban or the fucking our armed forces. Like, I don't know.
Those who defend suicide bombing, and there are very few, have...
Taliban gives them a medal for it? Oh, no way, dude. Does the Taliban give them a medal for it? Unlike the U.S. military. Wait, what happened to... Fuck. What happened to the dude that Donald Trump literally interfered in the investigation of? Gallagher. Whatever his name was. It was like something Gallagher. Eddie Gallagher. I mean, we literally do that. We straight up do that. I just, again...
don't have a leg to stand on. Those who defend the Israeli atrocities, including the U.S. government, most intellectual opinion, a good bit of the West generally, yeah, they don't have a leg to stand on either, and they have a much weaker position.
How do you distinguish between that kind of what you describe as terrorism and what they are saying, Osama bin Laden, who's a terrorist? Make the distinction.
It's very simple. If they do it, it's terrorism. If we do it, it's counterterrorism.
Yup.
That's a historical universal. Go back to Nazi propaganda, see? Most extreme mass murderers ever. If you look at Nazi propaganda, it's exactly what they said. They said they are defending the populations and the legitimate governments of Europe.
Does that disqualify the U.S. from their intervening in any other way?
Look, the Taliban are terrorists.
I think a lot of Americans need to wake up and realize that we are the bad guys. Like, just because we're writing the history does not change the reality that we literally are the fucking bad guys here. We are. We are the bad guys. Okay? You can wake up every morning and fucking tell yourself until you fall asleep that, like, what the American military is doing is good. Actually, it's good. It's for a better, it's for a good cause. It's for a good cause, but that's not the truth. Okay? It's literally not the truth.
State. That fact doesn't disqualify them from bombing Washington. What disqualifies from doing that is even if they were Mahatma Gandhi, they shouldn't do it. Nobody except the ultra-right-wing jingoists like Kaplan is comparing
The irony, of course, is that, like, most average citizens that aren't, like, super fucking reactionary fascists outside of America kind of recognize this. Like, everyone just keeps their fucking head down and just, like, will speak amongst themselves about how America is the bad guy. I mean, there are studies conducted on this matter that show it. The only instance where, like, America is seen as, like, a preferable hegemonic power is when it's compared to China. But beyond that, like, most people see the United States as a destabilizing power because we are.
Atrocities by various countries. What honest people are saying,
Hasan, you are not right, you are wrong. Okay.
Is that we should pay attention to our own crimes and stop committing them. This would be true even if we were killing one person, okay? And it's even more true when we're killing millions of people.
Yeah. The only time that we are the unconditional good guys is in pure fantasy, in Call of Duty, in Battlefield, in where in these video games we actually depict war crimes that we have done, like the Highway of Death, as war crimes that our enemies, Russia, have done. How crazy is that? Like, we're so fucking bad. We're so bad that, like, in movies and in media depictions, we make it seem like our enemies are the ones who are engaging in these, like, horrific acts of violence. China has become the #1 destination for students from Africa and Middle East to do post-grad work. An interview with Green Moore shows Africa preferring to work with China because of how shitty we've been. Name a country that doesn't have a fucked up past. I mean, I find this rather strange because we're talking about a country that has a fucked up present. So if your justification is like I want the other countries that are engaging in current acts of violence to stop as well. I live in this one, and this one is supposed to be a democracy. where my voice is supposed to be heard. Your voice is supposed to be heard. Don't fucking throw your hands up in the air and go, oh my God. Unless you think that we are just as powerless here in the United States of America as we would be in fucking China. Okay? I know for a fact that the average Chinese person has virtually no say in what the Chinese government does. Are you willing to admit that the average American person has absolutely no say in what happens in the American government as well? I agree with that sentiment. If you were to say that, I would agree with you. But most people don't want to believe that reality. You act as if Hamas would be a noble, fair ruler in this situation. They would massacre the Israelis if they had the power that Israel has. Yeah. You have to recognize that, like, you have to recognize this from the framework of, like, Jews versus Nazis. Those in the Warsaw ghettos. If they had access to the superior firepower that the Germans did, the Nazis did, then they would enact such senseless brutality on the Nazi regime, right? When you are oppressed, the expectation isn't to lay down and get raped and pillaged willingly and with honor. I'm sorry, that's a fucking idiotic take. It's wild to me. Absolutely wild to me that the mere mention of, like, America and Israel's war crimes is immediately weaponized against a congressperson who is speaking in a truthful capacity. Let's say that Ilhan Omar had equated the U.S. to Hamas. She didn't, but from a GOP point of view, so what? Aren't they the party of free speech and the right to offend? Don't they hate PC snowflakes and cancel culture and the hypocrisy, the sheer hypocrisy? I don't really care about that. I mean, of course they're hypocritical. No one gives a shit about free speech. Imagine thinking a capitalist nation would is anything but unequal and fundamentally undemocratic. I mean, now will come motherfuckers saying you are not American and you're a Turkish terrorist. Oh, of course. I mean, I hear that all the fucking time. Every time I have this take, like, I get a couple death threats, you know? Ilhan reps Minneapolis. The representative across the river in St. Paul is a white woman named Betty McCollum with more or less the exact same positions on Israel and foreign policy more generally. Oh, yeah. Betty McCollum has had these, ironically, Betty McCollum has had these exact same takes since 2001, for the record. I always forget to mention that. Like, remember how I read this statement from Betty McCollum? She's had these exact same takes as a white woman since 2001, and yet for some reason nobody fucking gets up in arms and wants to, like, murder her in the same way that they want to murder Ilhan Omar. You're not allowed to say the obvious part out loud, but the treatment that's being meted out to Ilhan has everything to do with the fact that she's a Muslim woman of color who's stridently critical of Israel. This is one of those instances where identity matters quite a bit. And the reason why identity matters is because it's supremely easy to vilify Muslims as anti-Semitic in general, but especially when they dare utter a peep about Israel and U.S. foreign policy. This strategy is proven demonstrably effective, and it will continue to work. Never, ever, ever back down, dude. Seriously. Freedom of speech doesn't exist for Muslim women in Congress. The benefit of the doubt doesn't exist for Muslim women in Congress. House Democratic leadership should be ashamed of its relentless, exclusive tone policing of Congresswomen of color. Like, I don't like the identity shield, but in this instance, it is like, it's perfectly fucking valid. It's not even necessary, for the record. You don't even need to be like, oh, it's because, she's a Muslim woman of color. Like, you don't even need to say any of that. You just straight up be like, fuck off. This is correct. And that's what I would do. Okay? That's what I do. I think that everyone should shut the fuck up. This is completely irrelevant. But the reason why she gets dunked on nonstop in comparison to other people with similar takes is because other people with similar takes are white and not visibly Muslim. So that's it.